If it wasn't already clear from the title of the video, She-Hulk has completely shattered my brain. I am struggling to string complete sentences together now, and I often find myself drifting off like a Vietnam vet having a PTSD flashback. After all the noise I heard about She-Hulk online, I assumed this show was literally going to reshape the universe. And it did, but not in the way I expected. I mean, I was expecting Samurai Cop, I was expecting Troll 2, I was expecting The Room. I was ready to watch the worst show I have ever seen in my life. A truly transcendently botched nightmare. But it was just nothing. My dopamine levels plummeted so hard, so fast, it was like
I'll never be cheerful again.
So I snapped. I can't comprehend or reason anymore. How could something so completely featureless and unremarkable consume so much time out of so many people's lives? And that's why I have to declare She-Hulk is a work of unparalleled genius. Because it's the weirdest con job anyone's ever pulled. Unfortunately, my recollection of the show has turned slippery, probably my unconscious mind trying to shield me from a traumatic experience. So forgive me for this stream of consciousness rant as I randomly bounce around the story of She-Hulk. There's a car crash. She-Hulk gets some of Bruce Banner's blood in her. She then turns into the Hulk. But it's fine because this appears to make zero difference to her life, just like all the events of the MCU seem to have made little or no impression on the denizens of Marvel land. Nobody seems to have suffered the slightest angst, let alone a full-blown existential crisis at the notion that we are not alone in the universe, or that death can apparently be reversed. And maybe there are infinite versions of us floating around in the multiverse. But considering she's the protagonist of the show, I assume Jen Walters' struggle might be a little bit more fleshed out. But it turns out I'm a fucking idiot and the genius showrunners found a way better idea. Just skip the whole internal struggle of the character to come to terms with a maniacally angry alter ego. Skip. Yeah, alter egos are just so 1997, you know what I mean? Plus, that leaves way more time for superheroing, so let's fucking go. Nah, whatever, I just want to live my life, says Jen Walters. Fuck responsibility and all that, let's party. And I'm like, hell yeah, let's do this, let's get wasted. You're She-Hulk, lady, you can probably jump to the moon, swim to the depths of the ocean, discover what goes on in the heart of a star. So what are we doing? Say what now? You're going to remain a wage slave, paying off your debt to your banker overlords? Yay! She's so pragmatic, that She-Hulk. I'm so happy to be watching a responsible adult trying to find her place within the social hierarchy. You can never discharge student debt, didn't you know that? I'm glad to know that She-Hulk won't be letting that interest creep up on her, no sir. Are you feeling the magic of the tale yet? Can you not feel the call to adventure, the thrill of the unknown beckoning you onward? Mystical wonders, strange, alien worlds, miraculous powers. No thanks, I think I'll stick with paying off debts and working mundane jobs. Thank you very much, says our protagonist. I'm already pretty much in a coma from the blinding brilliance of the show, but then literally nothing happens to change the status quo over the next few episodes. It then dawns on me that the opening of the show wasn't some kind of hero's journey, rejecting the call to adventure thing. She literally just refuses to be a superhero and goes around working her job for the rest of the show. Except sometimes she's green. And sometimes she awkwardly shoves people with her super strength. Exhilarating. There's a few zany clients for her to deal with, some of the magical persuasion, but it's all completely generic. The high point of excitement so far is that she's dealt with a trademark dispute and we've learned she enjoys twerking.
Eat it up, go play okay, 3, 2, 1. You know I'm the hottest, you ain't never gotta hit me.
The bad guy from the Hulk movie that I'm pretty sure Disney tried real hard to pretend never existed is back. I suppose Disney is such a juggernaut now that even the shameful aspects of their past are just more content to commodify. There's some momentary drama about the Abomination having been forced to take some crazy Hulk juice or something, which makes She-Hulk kind of empathize with the guy since she knows all about the Hulk juice. But then the moment ends and it's never brought up again because it doesn't matter, because nothing matters. Somehow, despite this schizophrenic, truncated storytelling, Glacial doesn't even begin to describe the pacing of She-Hulk. There are absolutely zero stakes in this show. In fact, there's pretty much no reason for She-Hulk to have superpowers. She's just green Ally McBeal, and that's the state of entertainment today. then, of course, there's the scintillating dating side quest she goes on. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a sucker for love stories. I will soak up the happiest, cheesiest fucking shoujo anime about a girl working her way through a legion of suitors. But those involve twists and turns, interesting personalities, obstacles, and people to root for, people to root against. She-Hulk goes beyond such dualistic concerns. It declares boldly that modern dating is awful and love is dead. Great. I was worried I might accidentally feel something for a second. The highest compliment I can pay the show is that it makes Full House look like a crime thriller. You want to talk about a chill show? This show is literally brain dead. You will not need to fire up that big old human consciousness of yours. If you've got a heart condition, you can rest easy. This show is definitely not going to be causing any heart attacks or feelings, which is convenient. So instead of staring at the wall for 3 hours, you can maybe stare at this show? How did Disney pull this off? How did they manage to grab the attention of the internet with such flatline storytelling in a hyper-competitive, hyper-saturated entertainment environment? You know that friend that was too into pro wrestling and thought the WWE was literally real a little too late into their life? And you know the other guy that's way too into explaining to the last guy that wrestling is in fact fake and therefore stupid? Both of these archetypical people surreptitiously agree on one thing, that it actually matters whether pro wrestling is real. Which brings me to the genius of She-Hulk and by extension the MCU in general. Disney has managed to convince people to focus so entirely on whether they are woke propagandists or paragons of social justice that they have successfully sidestepped almost all artistic scorn and criticism.
Very cool. Very cool.
Not only that, Disney has somehow convinced both the groups I mentioned to watch their products, take them very seriously, and then use the subsequent holy war between the fractured fan base to fuel their marketing campaigns for years. That is some Game of Thrones shit right there. The hysteria surrounding She-Hulk and Phase 4 Marvel stuff in general is exactly as bizarre as if a picture of a random rock became the center of discussion on Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit for several weeks. I mean, it's just a rock, right? Right? What am I missing here? It's just a fucking rock! And then you realize the rock said something racist, or worse, something feminist. And then it all makes sense. Only it doesn't make sense. Then in a moment of crystalline clarity, it hit me. Marvel is a drug dealer, and She-Hulk is a roofie. Suddenly it all made sense. Seriously, think about it. Why start a Michelin star restaurant if drugs are legal? Do you seriously think your sous vide steak is competing with heroin? I mean, companies clearly love selling drugs if they can get away with it. Look at Purdue Pharma. The East India Trading Company was basically the biggest opium dealer of all time. It's a great business strategy. Sell something addictive that guarantees lifelong use, and you've got a hell of a customer base. I'm getting off the point. I mean, Marvel is literally risking hundreds of millions of dollars every time they put out a product. Why would they not make it completely addictive? Obviously, we have the technology to do that now. Social media and smartphones already have most of the human population completely by the balls. All it takes is data and algorithmic analysis, and you can see it in any Disney product. It is meticulously produced, market tested, and psychologically precise. The filmmaking is generally immaculate, albeit bland. You're never going to find yourself complaining about the lighting or the acting or anything really. And you will never be remotely challenged emotionally, intellectually, or spiritually. It will be perfectly acceptable, perfectly sedate, perfectly addictive. And while legit drugs might be illegal in most places, digital drugs are open for business, baby. And that's all Marvel and Disney are really. A giant digital drug factory. Marvel has perfected the process of getting someone hooked on their shows to such a degree that their users slowly recede from all other avenues of life until there is nothing left but the drug. Everything else seems slow, boring, unsatisfying, distressing, and unpleasant, and users develop a tolerance to the drug. They need more and more, purer and purer, faster and faster, which is what can make it kind of confusing from the outside. People that aren't obsessed with the MCU hear other people talking about a show or a movie with the kind of passion and zeal generally reserved for the civil rights movement, and they can't understand what the hell is going on. But that's just because they haven't had a sweet taste of Marvel's designer digital drugs yet. If they had, they'd understand the ache, the longing, the desperate need for another hit, and they'd understand what it's like when you can't get that hit, which is exactly what Phase 4 of the MCU has been like for most fans. Plus, their tolerance is at astronomical levels by now. Literally, the MCU has already covered cataclysmic, universe-ending Dragon Ball Z level events. There is nowhere to go from here. A lot of people think that they can just dial back the scale of stories in the MCU, but any real addict knows that ain't happening. You don't tend to go back to marijuana once you've been on the meth train, if you know what I mean. So what do you do when drug users can't physically consume any more of your drug? You find new users, obviously, but the new users might not be interested in heroin or cocaine. They didn't go for it before, so why would they jump on board now? So you gotta come up with something else, something better. And you realize a lot of people just kind of want to be unconscious. They're not really looking to feel or think or experience anything. Life's hard, they're exhausted, overworked, living precarious lives between tenuous gigs that come and go like the seasons. At the end of a long, soul-sucking day, they just kinda wanna be sedated. So you start selling roofies. Which brings me to the digital rohypnol of modern media, She-Hulk. Like the date rape drug, it puts you to sleep, probably does some shady shit while you're unconscious, and then you forget the whole thing the next day. But how exactly do you advertise roofies? Can't just film a dude passed out, that's too boring. I know, just put something in your trailer that is market tested to piss off a strategic demographic slice of your audience.
Your transformations are triggered by anger and fear.
Those are like the baseline of any woman just existing.
Preferably, it should invoke one of the isms, unless it's communism, because you're still a drug-dealing corporation and even you couldn't bear to be that hypocritical. Then, thanks to the totally unnecessary controversy you've drummed up surrounding your new digital roofies, everybody tries it. Either because they like the sound of being unconscious, or because they're one of the old fans that needs to prove that the old drugs were way better than the new ones. And let's face it, the older fans are probably jonesing so bad at this point that they would gladly snort up some table salt if you handed it to them. Either way, they've fallen for your elegantly laid trap. They've taken the roofies. You may do as you please with their unconscious flesh. Think of the magnitude of the con. You don't have to bother with crafting an interesting story, a compelling arc for your characters, nothing. You just knock your audience out with a bizarre, hypnotic series of sequences that could literally be replaced with black frames, and then leverage a totally tangential discussion that has nothing to do with art or filmmaking or comic books, and actually make the marketing of this faceless, voiceless, soulless non-art viable. Now this may sound dire, but that's because I'm one of those old Marvel addicts I mentioned. I'm jonesing, just like the rest. But I don't want this to be your fate. If someone tries roofing you, just say no, you hear me? If you're a struggling Marvel addict in withdrawal like me, I'm here to tell you there's light at the end of the tunnel. Turns out this internet thingamajig is hooked up to stuff outside the Disneyverse. All the art from across time and space actually. There's genius work out there, more than you'll ever get through. More than you'll ever need to transform your body, your mind, and your soul. If it's too scary to venture outside the safe cocoon of comic books, you're still in luck, because turns out there's like 80 years of comics available all over the internet. A lot of it sucks too, but there's enough good shit to entertain you through several lifetimes on deserted islands. If you widen your horizons a tiny bit wider, the entire alternate dimension of manga and anime falls in. A little wider still, and we enter the timeless realm of novels and plays, spanning thousands of years of writing in hundreds of languages. And if film is all you like, then it might surprise you to learn that in the long ago, prior to the dawning of the first MCU product, there were the films that came before. Disney did for those films what the Christian church seems to have done for Greek, Norse, Egyptian, and many other gods. check them out. I think there were maybe some good films outside the MCU. It's hard to remember though, almost like imagining what existed before the Big Bang. What I'm trying to say is that you don't need to go insane like I did and keep watching this stuff until you claw your own eyes out. It's kind of unnecessary. Like if you got trapped under a boulder and you cut your hand off to get free and then you realize the boulder was actually just CG and you don't even really exist. Okay, clearly the symptoms of She-Hulk psychosis are starting to amp up, so I need to bring the curtain down on this bitch. I'm saying you should maybe walk away from the train wreck that is the MCU for a while and go do something else. Art is supposed to make you feel something, right? Or make you think, or laugh, or inspire wonder or excitement or fucking something. For the entirety of its runtime, She-Hulk made me feel like the eternal void had nestled in my heart, and I quickly realized that this was genius beyond my comprehension. A show that made you feel nothing. Clearly not for mere mortals like myself. When She-Hulk starts to feel like the end of human civilization and a herald of the descent into an apocalypse of alienated nihilism and the total death of art, I think it's time to take the day off. Gotta get clean off the Disney drugs now and again, I think. Go read some Grant Morrison or something. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this review and you have not had your senses addled by the magnificence of She-Hulk, maybe leave a like so I don't feel like I lost my mind for nothing. Subscribe to the channel if you want more essays and reviews. I also post sci-fi and fantasy stories, so check them out if you're looking for some digital methadone while you get clean off the MCU. Cheers, see you in the next one.